welcome back to another week of Deducation, the final episode of 2022, where we wrap up our Christmas horror little month, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Not really it's like we just picked a theme for the month because of Christmas, but it's been fun. I'm one of your hosts, Mike.
I'm Courtney.
And we're here to talk about, in my opinion, and we'll see what yours is, because this is honestly the only movie this month where I really have no idea what you would think. But we're talking about we're talking about Black Christmas, 1974 Bob Clark horror film. I saved this one for last because it consistently tops the charts as like best Christmas horror film, and goes down honestly as one of the best like slasher films really ever made. It really laid the foundation for movies like Halloween and whatnot, which came out in 78. This movie coming out in 74 was kind of in the middle of nowhere. There was horror out there, but it wasn't of this variety of where you have like a mass murderer kind of stalking people. But yeah, so Black Christmas. Not a good reception when it came out. I think for a lot of the same reasons that like Silent Night, Deadly Night did not.
Mm-hmm.
Of like you can't make Christmas scary.
Yeah,
don't do that. And this movie did. So, I'm not patient enough. Before we get too great, just reaction. I'm curious.
Okay,
I gotta open this. I gotta open this gift.
Okay, so I have mixed feelings about this movie. And it's like, because I did enjoy it, but it was kind of like, what is going on?
Fair enough.
In the sense that, like, I don't want to say that it was so broken up, but it's just like, until the end, I feel, I don't know, I didn't love it.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's fair.
but it wasn't a bad movie. Like, I didn't feel like, oh man, like that was a terrible movie. I did laugh at the phone calls. I was the immature kid that laughed at those.
That's okay.
But
I mean,
it was okay.
Yeah, to be fair, at least for this show, this is the oldest movie we've done.
Yes.
In 1974. There's a chance this might be the oldest horror film you've ever seen.
Oh, for sure.
Of 1974. And so there is a lot of, like, there wasn't a recipe yet, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
When we watch, because we've watched Nightmare, we've watched Friday, we've watched Halloween, they're all three of those movies, despite their differences, they still have a very similar recipe of, you've got a bunch of teens that are being stalked and they're being picked off one by one, and somebody lives at the end, and the music is there to build the tension, and there's a lot of slow play, and there's just a very cookie cutter approach to a lot of these horror films, which is why it's so important for them to like nail the bad guy, like a Michael Myers, a Jason Voorhees, a Freddy Krueger. Like, of those three, obviously they have the staying power. They're the most popular.
Yes.
But for every one of those, there's 20 more ripoffs that just didn't work because in terms of having a sequel, like they may be good movies, but they're just like standalone films because they followed the recipe, but they didn't have anywhere to go with it. This movie kind of was the cookbook that you pull that recipe from.
And that's what I had to remember, like, because you had said, like, a lot of the movies have, like, kind of been not based on this, but they have kind of...
Inspired.
Inspired, that's the word. So I was like, okay, Courtney, remember that. Like, this is an important movie in the horror film industry. But...
Right.
Yeah, it's not that I didn't like it. It was okay.
No, I know. Well, and maybe there's a chance, and I'm holding out hope that as we discuss, you might think about certain pieces a little differently, or because again, the first digestion of a movie sometimes is just that. It's surface value.
Yes.
You may not think a lot about it. You may not dive too deep into it. You just watch it and it's over and you're like, okay. But when you start layering in things like, there's a lot of feminism in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very strong female cast.
Yes,
One
and
thing
it hits on some political things too. I feel like, which could be.
Yeah.
I mean, it talks about abortion. Like that could be something that could have been definitely a talker.
Yeah, and this movie came out not long after Roe versus Wade, and so but you have a very strong, intelligent female cast, which is one thing the director really wanted to go with. Is he did not want to fill a movie full of just dumb teenage girls, or in this case, college girls. So we'll call them in their early 20s. Just dumb college girls that make bad decision after bad decision. They're living in genuine fear of the unknown, and as we go through the plot a little bit, we'll do some spoilers for a movie that's nearly 50 years old. But they really aren't making bad decisions.
No, they're not.
That there's really only one instance towards the end where I think things got a little absent-minded, but by and large, like, you have a fairly intelligent cast, you have well-rounded female characters. They're not relying on a man to save them. Even the whole abortion plot is, she's taken the ownership of it. I'm pregnant and I don't want the baby. And a lot of times you almost feel it's the other way around. Like the guy's pressuring her for an abortion. In this case, it was reversed. He's like, no, we got to keep the kid. We got to keep the kid. She's like, it's going to ruin my life. Like, I'm not ready for this. And so, you've got a lot to unpack here. I love the absence of music. I mentioned earlier, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, they all have a soundtrack that really lays on the doom. This movie you're left to a lot of silence.
You are.
And it kind of forces you into the world they're in of, we know something they don't know, but there's no way for us to tell them that.
Yeah. So
we're stuck in that uncomfortable moment, knowing a secret that our characters don't know, and we just have to live with that dread because there's no music telling us that there's something coming. There's no swell of an orchestra or sharp violin music. It's just like, oh no, that's not uncomfortable. Or that is uncomfortable. And so just a lot to unpack. Critics hated this movie originally, but a lot of critics have reevaluated it over time and realized, like, we were wrong. Like, this movie is a landmark film for the genre. It's a very influential movie, and a lot of times only time will tell. In '74 nobody was making movies like this.
Yes.
But give it 10 years later, and you've now got this swelling of slasher movies. It's like, wow. But so let's dive into it a little bit. Movie starts out right away.
Yes,
with
it does.
a man climbing up. I mean, he's just kind of walking around the outside of the sorority house, and he finds this like rose trellis that apparently is made of carbon fiber.
It's strong.
Because he scales the entire thing all the way up to the top, he finds an open window in the attic and he crawls in, and that's how our movie starts. Somebody has snuck into the house. We don't see who it is. We don't really have a reason yet to fear who it is. But we know that going in through the attic is not usually the most welcome way into a home.
No, not usually.
One interesting... I usually come in through the garage or the front door. I don't try to sneak in through the attic. One thing, though, is whenever this person ends up being the killer, we'll just get to that. But whenever one thing this movie did that Halloween also did, and really nobody did it much prior to this, there was an earlier movie called Peeping Tom, which shows a lot of the movie from the killer's perspective. But this movie does this a lot, where anytime we're seeing, we see the camera on our characters as like a viewer, and then we see the camera from the eyes of our killer.
Yeah, and I like that because it gives you, like, you're put into their perspective and, like, from their point of view. I do like when movies do that.
Right. Yeah, because it's just like when we see the camera, like, for, you know, when we've got one of the girls on the phone listening to the call, or they're just on the phone, whatever, and the camera's on them, and we're like, okay. But then when it cuts to the killer who's looking at them from just upstairs, you're like, if they turned around right now, they're going to see the guy.
Yes.
Of course, they never do. So it is Christmas Eve. They're having a party at the sorority house. It's a Pi
Kappa
Sigma something or other.
Yeah.
But they're having it's a obviously all female sorority house. The house mother is not there yet, but they're having a party, and the telephone rings, and our main character Jess answers, and it's another phone call. It's important here. It's another phone call from a person who's been calling before. He's called so much they dub him the Moaner.
Yes.
And all the girls kind of gather around the phone, and it's just a guy making just obscene sounds and weird noises and just very vulgar language. And so some of the girls are very uncomfortable with it. You know, some of them are just kind of laughing it off. Barb, who is another character, she's like constantly drunk.
Yeah,
she gets
she's
she
the
gets
typical.
On the phone.
I feel like
she's probably the
people...
most realistic sorority girl.
Yeah.
So she gets on the phone and she just starts threatening him, and just kind of getting him all riled up, and he threatens to kill her.
Yeah,
he just drops his tone. Yeah, like everything was moaning and noises or whatever, and then she starts harassing him, and he just drops it. He goes, "I'm going to kill you," and then just hangs up. And it's like, man, and so there's a younger student, Claire, and a lot of the movie centers around Claire's story. You've got Claire who she's getting ready to leave. She's going to pack her suitcase to go home for the holidays. She just tells Bart, you got to knock it off. It could be a rapist.
Yeah, because there had been one around campus, Claire had said. So she's like, that's not something you should...
It's just very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so she goes upstairs to pack her suitcase because she's going to leave. Of course, again, we've already seen somebody climbing through the attic. That's important to remember. So she's going to go upstairs, pack her suitcase. The house mother, Miss Mac is what they called her. McHenry, I think.
I liked her.
Yeah. She lives like a woman who has a job worth living with a bunch of 20-year-olds.
Yes.
So she shows up. She's got a bunch of gifts. Like, basically, she shows up to distract everybody from what's going on with Claire upstairs. As Claire's packing her suitcase, she hears a noise in her closet. She thinks it's her cat.
Yes.
Claude. Or it's like the house cat.
The house cat, yeah.
So she's looking in there, and it's like dry cleaning plastic or whatever, and she's looking, and of course she goes to check it out because there's no reason not to. But apparently, like, this closet has like a sub area set back, and the killer who was up in the attic, he just comes out and attacks her with the plastic from the dry cleaning, wraps her on her face, and just suffocates her.
Yeah.
Just kills her right there. We're like,
it is
4
graphic
minutes into the movie.
because it's like you can... way that it is, it's like you can tell her last breath was taken in, and it's like, boom, you're dead. You're done.
Yeah, they do. It is really harrowing to see it because... it is like all the plastic sucked into her mouth and up her nostrils, and like it's just like, man, that's even as an actress, that had been tough to film.
Yeah, like, this is why you don't play with bags, kids.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I guess there's your teachable moment. And so he flings her over and takes her up into the attic. Like, everybody's busy with Miss Mac and doing their party. that they like someone was just murdered in the house and
Yep.
the killer's still there. We know it, they don't, and that's it's just so creepy. So he takes her upstairs and just puts her in a rocking chair by the window.
With a creepy doll.
That's where she sits. Like, yeah, she
She's
sits there the whole
totally
day.
like that
Like,
creepy
Yeah.
thing.
And so, like I said, the party's wrapped up. He takes Claire upstairs. The next morning, Claire's dad shows up. Now, Claire's been dating a townie.
Yes.
And so her dad shows up. He's going to take her for Christmas break. She doesn't show up where she's supposed to. But everybody at the party just assumed Claire left. Like, it's just this big mystery. Of course, we know where Claire is, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dad shows up to the house, and he's very proper. And of course, Miss Mac is not proper at all.
Yeah.
And there is some humor peppered into this movie, which shouldn't surprise you because, like we talked about before, like the director of this movie, Bob Clark, later on he directed, a really raunchy early '80s comedy called Porky's. He also directed, Christmas Story.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he knows how to direct comedy,
Yes.
and there are some funny parts to this movie, but it's not a comedy. They're
No.
just kind of subtle, real life kind of humor. So, Miss Mac assumes that she went, maybe, I don't know, the fraternity house was having a party, and just says, I'll help you look for her. And so, they kind of join up to go look around campus for Claire. Then we kind of jump over to Jess's story.
Yes.
And what was Jess's boyfriend's name?
So, Peter.
Forget. Peter. That's right.
Peter. And she had informed Peter that she was pregnant. And he was like you mentioned earlier, like it was totally vice versa of what you think would happen usually. Like he was excited and she's like, I'm getting an abortion. And he was angry and wanted to continue talking about it later that night. And he just wasn't having the whole her getting an abortion because she didn't let him have any say in that or anything at all.
Right. Yeah. He's a music student, so he spends a lot of his time at like the music conservatory.
Yes.
Which plays a little role later on. But yeah, he's just playing his piano and she just breaks it down. Now, I couldn't wrap my head around their relationship.
Yeah.
Because she seemed very like over the relationship when she broke the news to him. Even like before she broke it, she's almost like, but it's like,
Yeah.
I guess I just don't understand it because it's her boyfriend and clearly they've been intimate together because she's pregnant. And I don't know. I just was weird because I'm like, you seem really over this relationship.
To me, it kind of reminded me of like a friends with benefits and he caught feelings and she didn't type relationship.
Okay. And maybe in the 70s, I mean, obviously in the 70s, you didn't have quite the extensive vocabulary for
Yes.
dating as we do now. Friends with benefits, or we're talking, or we're dating, or, it's like back. So maybe whenever you were with a guy, he was your boyfriend. I don't know. But that makes more sense. That makes more sense that they just hooked up and this happened and she just, I don't want this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they've talked about their future. Like he had plans and she had plans and, but it just seemed, it almost gives the vibe of like, sometimes in movies, a man will propose to a woman and she says no, and then the relationship just falls apart.
Yeah.
It kind of has that vibe to it. Like,
Yep.
I'm pregnant, so our relationship is over.
Yeah.
Like,
This is what it's taken for me to realize
he did.
don't want to be with you.
Yeah, and she's strong, and I do respect the character for this, because he's just like, well, no, we can talk about it later. She's like, it's not going to change my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want the baby. Like, it's just going to interrupt the plans that I have in my life. I'm okay with it. No. And, but yeah, he doesn't like the news. So we cut back to the search party. Claire's dad, Barb and Phil have now jumped in. Barb being the drunk, and Phyllis being just another sorority girl.
Yep.
I'm a good friend, she's there, whatever. They've all teamed up. They've gone to they've gone to the police station to report her missing because they have no idea. So they're talking to Sergeant Nash, who is just your bumbling idiot cop.
Yeah.
He really is an idiot, this guy. And so, like, Nash is just like, okay, well, we're real busy right now. We're not too worried about it. And
Claire's,
maybe it wasn't yet. But yeah, so he's just not...
Claire's boyfriend is the one that finally got him to take it seriously because he barged in and he was ticked.
Yeah, and he's like a townie.
Yeah.
And some of the sorority girls, which I've never understood this, some of the sorority girls are almost like, they kind of frowned at Claire a little bit for dating a townie. Mm-hmm. And it's like, because I remember when I was at college, it was a big deal too. People were like, oh, you don't date a townie. And I'm like, not to me, but just in general, there was this like stigma. And I guess I never understood because I'm like, just because where they live, like,
yeah, it's like we chose to go to college here, so
right. And it's like some of the people that go to college here also are townies. Like,
yes.
So if you can only date people you meet at school. Well, some of them live in town. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. Was it different at QU?
Honestly, I did not get out much at Quincy, so I don't know. I was just so wrapped up in my own boyfriend that I didn't really even hear about that
Fair
stuff.
Enough.
But at ISU, it was kind of like that. Like, you only dated the guys who were in college, not the townies, because most of them were like working your blue collar jobs, which is not frowned upon by any means. But like in college, we thought like, no, we want like a rich guy, so they weren't going after the townies.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I get it. It's when you're right out of high school and young and dumb, and you think you know everything about adulthood because you're an adult now, but you really know nothing. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, no. I want to shackle myself to a guy with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt instead of that guy who's making $50 an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. While the search party's at the police station, they hear that there's been a high school girl that's also gone missing.
Yep.
And so now this like Claire, like this very centralized Claire is missing story has grown some legs a little bit, and it's now a town thing. And so, we've got some more curiosity on that Claire. Of course, it's not really curiosity because we know where she's at. She's upstairs in the attic dead. It's like, it's weird because like we're watching a mystery that we know the answer to. But now the mystery is, when do they find out?
Yes.
And so, so we're back at the sorority house. It didn't really go anywhere. Barb literally cracked a beer at the police station.
Oh, Barb.
Gave Sergeant Nash a very inappropriate phone number for them to call back on. One that he did not understand the terminology on. So we're back at the house. Barb isn't feeling well, so we put Barb to bed. And the search party, they go out to help find the girl, like the high school girl. Because that's kind of where the whole town is right now, is there's a search party for this high school girl that we know is missing. But we're not going to search for the college girl because, well, college girls have reasons to go missing.
Yeah.
So Miss Mack hears something up in the attic.
And she thinks it's the cat.
Yeah, she just believes that it's Claude the cat. So I'm trying to think of a nice word to... She works her way up the ladder.
She's struggling in her moo-moo.
Yeah, she works her way up the ladder, and she finds Claire. As she gets up there, she's kind of looking around, and she sees Claire sitting, like, again, asphyxiated in the rocking chair by the window, and just gasps. Not before, though, she turns around and catches, like, a crane hook.
Yeah.
Like, through the throat. And so Miss Mac is now dead from the killer upstairs. She had previously told the sorority girls that she was going to go visit her sister for the holidays. So now she's kind of built in this alibi.
Yeah.
Not really an alibi, but she's built in an out by telling them, I'm going to, you girls hold it down. I'm going to go visit my sister.
Yep.
So they just assume she's left, but now she's dead. She's up in the attic with Claire. They do find this missing high school girl. Janice is her name.
Yes, and she is dismembered.
Yes, yeah, she's been she's like in the park, just disfigured. They find her body, and it's like, so now the town's on high alert.
Yeah,
like we've got a killer on the loose, not realizing we've got 3 dead bodies in this movie now, but we found one. So Jess is the only one home alone. Barb's upstairs asleep. Everybody else is out looking for Janice. They find her, but Jess answers another phone call, and another obscene one, and she's just kind of appalled by it. I do love the way Jess answers the phone in this movie. She's very impatient. She'll pick it up and go, "Hello, hello." Like it's like, like every time she answers it, it's like 3 hellos within 2 seconds. And so, she decides she's going to call the police now.
Yep.
Because she's had enough. And, they should have done this earlier on, but they're college girls. They're just having fun with it. So she calls to file a report with the police. Peter shows up to surprise her.
And the way that he, snuck down...
Yeah, it made you think it was the killer.
It did. It made me think, oh, well, here goes Jess. She's done, too. And, and then Peter, he's like, hey, and so it was like, oh, okay, it's just him.
And she's like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I was just upstairs taking a nap. No big deal. Which, I mean, huge, in the film industry, they call this a red herring, where they, I don't know where the terminology came from, and it doesn't really matter at the moment. But really, it's a plot's way of pointing every finger at a certain direction, and this interaction here where we just saw Miss Mac get murdered upstairs.
Yeah.
And we don't know Peter's in the house, but we know somebody's in the house. And Jess is on the phone, and then down the stairs, all ominously come these feet. And then there's Peter coming from upstairs when we didn't know he was there. So naturally, everybody, myself included, are like, oh, he did it. Yeah. He's the killer. But a lot of times when it happens like this, it's just misdirection. They're just trying to paint us into that corner. So Peter shows up and surprise, let's get married.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my.
Hey, I'm gonna quit music.
Yep.
So that's not gonna be on our way. We can get married. Let's have the baby and get married. And she's like, I've got my own plans, and no, the baby's not one of them.
Yeah.
So good for her, because again, marriage and baby are kind of a big deal. It's different than hey, let's go get our noses pierced.
Yes, this is a bigger commitment than that for most people.
Yeah. And so she's like, no, I'm not doing it. So he obviously leaves angry. As he leaves, Lieutenant, who's probably the only smart cop on the police force, he shows up. He shows up as Peter's on his way out the door because they're going to tap the phone.
Yes.
We're going to figure out who's calling you. We'll get this taken care of. Did you recognize the cop in this movie?
No, but he was attractive.
John Saxon. He is a handsome man. He was Nancy's dad in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, okay.
Also playing a police officer.
Got you. He wasn't as attractive in that one.
It was 10 years later. But,
a few years.
Yeah, John Saxon is a handsome devil.
Yes, he is.
In his prime, if there was some sort of magic spell to where I woke up in the morning and looked in the mirror and I looked like John Saxon, I would be okay with that. He's a handsome dude. So if you wanted to dive into John Saxon filmography, he was in quite a few martial arts movies back around this time, where he's sweaty and topless. So. And pretty chiseled and cut on top of that. So I'll let you adventure down that path if you so see fit. Lieutenant Fuller is his name. Lieutenant Fuller shows up. We're going to tap the phone. So we're really starting to get somewhere.
Yes.
We haven't found Claire, but we are getting somewhere on the phones, on the phone calls. We do hear we hear Barb start like, well, actually, no, before we hear it, we see someone, the killer,
Yes.
Come into Barb's room, and he's watching her sleep, and it's so creepy because it's from his point of view, and so he's like right there, like hovering over her. She's got all of these like glass menagerie animal figures, which it's kind of given some like crystalline views, so it's got really cool like shots where they're kind of shooting through some of this to conceal him. So Jess is downstairs dealing with the police. We know the killer is in Barb's room. We, at this point, aren't sure if it's Peter or not because he just left.
Yeah, but it's like, who's to
unless
say
he
he
went
didn't
back up
climb
through the
back
attic.
through?
Right. And so we hear Barb just start freaking out.
Yeah, having a little like
It's like
asthma
right after
attack.
the police leave. Yeah. So yeah, she Jess goes to find out she's having this asthma attack. She gets her inhaler. She even said, "I had a nightmare that somebody was in my room just watching me," which of course we know wasn't a nightmare.
Yeah.
You really kind of saw that. About this time, just so awesome. Just decision making for the filmmakers. I don't like it when they throw in some goofy little thing just to break the plot up. But it's like when Claire went upstairs to pack, by timing Miss Max coming home with that, Claire could get murdered and no one realize it because there was commotion. So she goes and checks on Barb, which is fine. And then, she, like I said, she goes and checks on Barb, and then Barb is okay, gonna go back to sleep, which fell asleep like instantly.
Yeah.
I even joked about that with my wife. Like they were just talking, and then the split second later, she's out cold.
Yeah.
But then we hear carolers outside.
Yes, and I think that way that these scenes were split was like they were good because it was like things that could actually happen. Like those are realistic things. Like
and that's right, and that's what I was getting at. Is I like it when movies have a very like realistic, like these carolers were just, it's Christmas time. They just came to the door. Like
they're just little kids out singing.
That was enough. That was enough commotion to get Jess away from Barb. And so when Jess goes down to watch the carolers, the killer, who's still in the room, when Jess was in there, he's still in the room. He comes out, Barb's again asleep, and he picks up like the glass unicorn and just murders her with it. Stabs her to death with this unicorn, and Jess is downstairs smiling and clapping for the carolers. Like all of this is going on in the same house. It's so uncomfortable to watch. And then Jess gets another phone call. Now, as a viewer, if you're paying attention, they do get to it eventually. They lay it out a little thick for us. But the phone rings after every murder.
Yeah.
Like, the phone rings at the beginning of the movie, and we can assume it's after he killed Janice. And then he kills Claire and calls again. And then he kills Miss Mac and kills again. And then he kills Barb and calls again. So there's all of these phone calls that are happening. And we know they're all timed after a murder. But they don't know about the murders yet.
No.
They just think everybody's missing. And so gets another phone call, which, again, what they're doing here with the tracking, and I'm sure it traces a lot faster today, but they've got a phone set up at the police station, and so whenever Jess gets a call, the phone at the police station gets a call, and then the guy at the switchboard, like out of the phone company, he has to go find and trace it, and so he gets a couple opportunities, and they fail. Like the first one's the killer. He calls right away and hangs up before they trace it. and then Peter calls, and the lieutenant decides go ahead and trace that one too.
Yes.
Because remember, Peter was leaving angry, so he's not really sure if Peter's free and clear. So trace that, but again, he hangs up before it gets traced. Which again, it's so cool because it's like the characters don't know what's going on, but we also aren't sure who the killer is.
Yeah, but we know. I mean, yeah, we know a little bit more than they do, but not too much.
Right. And so Lieutenant calls the house and it says, Jess, that was Peter. You know, and she was almost like, well, why did you trace it?
Yeah.
And then the killer had also said, like, he took a line from Peter, like, word for word. And when the lieutenant asked her about it, she just played dumb. Mm-hmm. And Phil was even upset with her. Like, how do you know it's not Peter? And it's, and so really trying to line this up where Peter's the killer. Phil and Jess are obviously uncomfortable in the house.
Yeah.
They have this like weird run-in with a couple of the search party members because they're out looking for the killer of Janice, because that's the only person we know that's dead. And they drop some nice little information. You need to lock every door and window because people can get in. So Phil is going to check on Barb. And when she goes in to check on her, the door closes behind her, and we assume Phil's a goner.
She's killed. Yeah. And
we know she is eventually, but we don't see it.
And then the phone. I mean, we know she is because the phone call comes in, and it's like these kids fighting, and Agnes, and Billy.
And Billy.
And this one is traced. Yeah. And so therefore,
and
Nash.
The lieutenant. They trace it, but the lieutenant's not there.
Yeah.
The lieutenant is checking out the conservatory where Peter was, which apparently is across town in this college town.
Yeah.
Whatever. But yeah, so now everybody's kind of scattered. Like you said, this one they trace. The guy at the phone company calls and tells Nash, which he's such an idiot. But yeah, tells Nash, and like they say, don't just tell her to put the phone down and leave the house.
Yeah.
So you got to tell her. We got a guy stationed outside. We got a cop outside. Everything's safe. Well, the cop's been murdered too. Mm-hmm. We don't see that murder either, but the cop gets murdered.
Yeah.
So Nash, with simple instructions to just tell her to hang up the phone and go out the front door and leave. He doesn't do it because he's an idiot. Just put the phone down and leave. But what about Phil and Barb? Don't worry about them. Just put the phone down and leave. But Phil and Barb, the killer's calling from inside the house.
Yes.
Like, oh, Nash.
Get out.
And so this is the only real time in the movie where I was disappointed with a character decision.
Okay.
Because Barb has just been... Nope. Jess has just been told the phone calls are coming from inside your house. Mm-hmm. Put the phone down and get out. And then Jess grabs like a fireplace poker and then goes upstairs. I understand that she doesn't know about Barb and Phil. I get that. I know she's concerned for them. But at some point, like, self-preservation's got to be a thing.
Yes. Think of yourself, kids.
Like, she doesn't put down the phone and leave the house. She goes upstairs to go find Barb and Phil. And when she walks into Barb's room, she finds Barb and Phil. They're kind of this mangled up mess of bodies. Mm-hmm. The killer is... this was creepy.
He's got a super strength.
Yeah, well, not only that, but like this scene where she's like just inside the door, and she hears breathing, and when she looks at the door, and he's standing behind the door and looking at her through the crack. Yeah, and and she could see him. And so he starts to close it on her, and she like slams the door open, like, you know, like slams it against him. He kind of gives out a holler. She takes off downstairs. Of course, it's a low banister, so as we just think she's about to get away, well, he's right behind her and grabs her by the hair.
Oof, which was painful.
As a person who's never had long hair, but I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And so she does get loose and heads to the basement. She gets to the basement and shuts the door before he can get to it. So he's throwing himself against the door, you know, trying to get in, and the door's holding, thankfully. And then it just stops. And then the banging just stops. She hears walking away. She hears the front door. So she's, I guess, safe in the basement.
Yeah.
But the cops are on the way. To be fair, the cops are on the way. They've notified Lieutenant Fuller, who is on his way over. They're swarming in on the house. But not before she's downstairs in like the creepiest basement known to man.
Yeah.
Like, you thought the attic was creepy? Like, this basement is...
You should see the basement.
It just sucks up the light, yeah. So, she's downstairs. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, as she's downstairs, there's a visitor at the window who...
This is a really creepy... That was a real creepy image, too.
Yeah.
Just seeing his silhouette, just like...
Yep. Just peeking through the window and calling her name.
Yeah.
So, Peter makes his way into the basement. He's worried about Jess.
Yeah.
And
coincidentally, Peter shows up.
Yeah.
Just as the killer leaves.
And he sees her. He goes over to her, and she's like backing away from him because I mean now it's like, well, maybe he is the killer in her head. The police have arrived. And they head down to the basement, and it scans around, and there you see two bodies laying, kind of sitting up, laying next to each other. And Peter is bloody, laying next to a almost like unconscious Jess.
Yeah. Yeah. Peter's dead.
Yeah.
Like, she got him.
Yeah. Like something.
Hooray, we got the killer. Or did we?
Exactly. I was like, but did we?
No.
Because, yeah, that's what I thought. And I was like, okay, what an ending. And they had thought that everything, you know, like that, like Peter was the killer. So they took Jess upstairs. She's sedated, and they're just kind of like letting her rest. And you hear something coming from the attic.
Yeah, it was really weird. Like, because like you said, she's there and everybody's around her. There's a doctor there. Well, like Claire's dad passes out too.
Yeah.
So the doctor and the police officer get him out of there. And then like the house just empties out. Like you're not going to take this girl to the hospital? Like, they just leave her laying in the bed in an empty house that people have been murdered in. They're like, she'll be fine.
Yeah.
No, she won't be.
She's good.
Like, she's gonna wake up at some point. Yeah, they did leave a police officer out front.
Yes.
Okay, whatever. But then, like you said, we see the attic door open.
And this alludes to the killer is still alive
and still in the house.
And
then the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, and then they cut to the attic. So apparently, obviously, the police searched the house everywhere except the attic.
Yep.
Don't understand it. Claire's dead body is still sitting in a rocking chair by the window. Miss Mack's body is still up there as well. And the camera, really cool shot. They start on the window, and then they just back it up. In 1974, they didn't have drones. So, you know, interesting how they did this. But they started the camera on the window and then backed it up to where we got to see the whole house. The police officer standing on the porch. You could still see Claire in the window. Yeah. And then we hear the phone ringing.
This kind of reminded me of Krampus at the end. Like, you know, it's backing out and you can see everything. And it's just like, you know, the calmness. And then the phone rings and it's like, hey, I'm Billy. Like,
Right.
just his little
Well, and
squeaky, his voice.
Well, and of course, nobody ever answers the phone.
Yeah.
And so it just rings, and we know the killer only calls after a murder.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess Jess got killed too. We don't know,
Yeah.
but we know the killer was coming downstairs. We know the only person in the house is an unconscious Jess. The police officer's out front, and then we hear the phone ringing, which means Peter was not the killer. The killer is still on the loose, and nobody knows.
Yeah.
Like, it would be very interesting to see like what would happen the next day when the police show up to check on Jess and find her dead in the bed.
Yeah. And there's not like a second one of these, is there?
No. There's 2 remakes.
Okay.
2006 and 2019. I haven't seen either one, so I don't know if they elaborate or take some liberties. I don't know. But that's how this movie ends. This movie bothered me more the more I thought about it afterwards. Just like the eyeball in the like I look at my kids through the cracks sometimes, like, and just the stillness of the house, like, that this person was hiding almost in plain sight,
Yes.
and was doing whatever he wanted, and they had nothing to go off of.
No idea.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable.
It is. And like, I mean, I don't know. And again, like you said, talking about it more, I think my grade went up a little bit because
Good.
It's just like, it's not that I watched it again, but it's like I did kind of, watch it again from memory with us talking about it and just being able to, because I mean, and it is scary to think about. Like, it's like playing hide and seek sometimes. All, like hide from Hank, and we'll tell him to come find us. And it's like, I'm in the closet and I'm peeking at him and he's sniffing around looking for us. It's like, that could happen. Like, that's real life.
Yeah. There was some controversy with this movie. 4 years after it came out, it was a late January in 1978. Black Christmas was going to make its television premiere on NBC. But 2 weeks prior to that, at Florida State University, the Chi Omega sorority house was the scene of a double murder.
Oh my goodness.
Someone had snuck into the sorority house and killed 2 of the sisters in their bed, bludgeoned them to death, and then attacked 2 others, but that survived.
Wow.
And it ended up being Ted Bundy was the killer. Like 2 weeks prior to this movie, which of course, murders in a sorority house are going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
NBC ended up pulling it from their lineup. Like, they didn't show it. And which, like Florida's governor contacted NBC executives and were like, you can't show this movie. Like, this literally just happened.
Yeah, like, this is hitting way too close to home.
Yeah, and so, it's like, it obviously wasn't the movie's fault. But,
yes.
But just some, like, just shows that the unlike Halloween and Friday the 13th and, Nightmare on Elm Street, which are not realistic. They're not going to happen. Yeah. Like, this movie could.
Yes. This is, I guess, where I'm going to go into my lesson. And this is, like, again, not really geared towards my age of kids, but towards college kids and, like, older kids. Like, the buddy system that we do at, like, field trips in kindergarten, there's a reason for it. Go out with a group. Please do not go by yourself. Like, I have been that dumb college student where I'm like, oh, I'm fine, I'll walk home by myself. And it's like, no, it's not okay. Like, do not. Because right now, what were there, 4 murders in Ohio, Chicago, I read, which, again, like, I've not read these in the newspaper. They've just come across on Twitter and stuff. There's, like, a serial killer in Chicago right now for young males, I read. And it's like, this is very real life. Like, be in a group. I'm not saying it's going to save you, but
Right.
it might.
Yeah. Well, and to go along with that, I guess I'll go into my lesson a little bit here. I mentioned early on that, there is a lot of feminist message in this movie,
Yes.
Which I'm a firm supporter and believer of. I think it's great. But I think it's important, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I am definitely to sit here and say, feminism, and then from my male voice talk to females is a little ironic. But I really feel that strong woman and smart woman are very similar when it comes to feminism.
Yes.
You mentioned like just because you are a strong female doesn't mean you're indestructible.
Yeah.
And so you still have to be smart. Just because you're brave enough to walk home by yourself doesn't mean you should walk home by yourself.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's important to still recognize the real disgust that's out there in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you're not afraid of it doesn't mean you shouldn't be, to a degree.
Yeah.
Like I don't care how strong a personality you have, if you can be physically overpowered, it's not worth it just to prove your strength.
No.
So be smart. It doesn't make you look weak. It makes you smart. And I think that's important. And it's one that I hope that I can instill in my daughter, as well as any female student I come across, of like, guys, this isn't about appearing strong. It's about being smart.
Yes. Yes. Survival of the smartest.
I hope that wasn't too like. Yes, thank you. Because I was like, I want to say it, but I don't want to come off like I'm mansplaining feminism.
Yeah.
No,
not. I get you.
But as an ally and a partner, it's like, no, I want what's best for everybody,
Yes.
including you, and so it's like, use your brain. Like, Jess, you should have just left the house.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, that's what the police told you to do. Everything you've done to this point has been a smart decision.
Yep.
And then suddenly you go up to fight. Not even fight, but they told you someone is in your home. You didn't know it up to this point. Up to this point, you had no idea.
And
but
like, what if the killer was one of her friends? Like, don't go up there.
Yeah, like, just leave. It's okay, leave.
Yeah.
So yeah, gotta be smart. So, all right. Well, we flipped a little bit. What do you grade it?
I'm giving this movie a B-.
Okay.
Just because, like, it took me, like, I liked it. I did enjoy it. It was okay. I guess there's a difference between I liked it and it was okay. But kind of watching it in my head after we talked about it, it made it a whole lot creepier as we were talking about it. Like, the fact that, and just hearing, like, Casey and I were just talking about these murders in Ohio, like, this stuff is real.
Yeah.
And that's spooky.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I'm gonna give this movie an A. I'm gonna give it an A. I almost said A-. I'm just gonna give it an A. Mm-hmm. Because of its influence on other movies, because of its it's the creep factor. Yeah. Like, again, because it's very realistic, and the choices made by the director to not have a soundtrack, that really, like, builds the tension, to just let the tension be the tension.
Yes.
To let the empty spaces, to let the empty hallway be the tension.
Mm-hmm.
To where we don't know, is somebody going to come rushing at the camera?
Yeah.
Is somebody, or when we see him come down the stairs and he's watching her on the phone, like, it was uncomfortable enough to be like, this is okay. Yeah. I'd seen it before, but I really watched it and paid attention this time. And it's like, yeah, it's just, it wasn't a gory movie.
No.
But it was just uncomfortable. And and creepy. And it's like just the thought of what do you do if someone's in your house and you don't know it?
Mm-hmm. Now, you had mentioned last week Scream. Does Scream kind of have the phone calls as well? Because, again, I've never seen that movie. Surprise!
Yeah, Scream has the phone call.
Okay.
Yeah, Scream has the phone calls, and it does take a lot from this movie. Scream was influenced by this movie. Scream was also influenced by another I think it's early 80s, maybe 1980, movie called Prom Night, also starring Jamie Lee Curtis from Halloween.
Okay.
Where just more phone calls from the killer. And so, yeah, Scream was influenced by that. The first Scream, well, I mean, all of the Scream movies have it because that's their gimmick.
Yeah.
But the first Scream movie was really out of nowhere. Just because for that generation, that movie came out in 96, I believe. And it's like, nobody had really seen the killer is calling you since the mid 70s, early 80s. And so for an entire generation, the thought of somebody's on the phone is creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I'm at grade-wise, is an A just for the influence the movie had. We were talking about Scream before I was interrupted. I like to throw that bit in so that when I cut it out of the show, and it's like, boy, that got real jerky.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, what were we talking about? But no, with Scream, like, I just think because there wasn't an entire generation of people that hadn't seen something like that before, and so really caught them off guard. But no, this movie I found very effective. I mean, honestly, not one that it's not going to scare you every time you watch it, kind of
Correct.
thing. Once you know what's up, but still, it's like, well done, Bob Clark.
Yeah.
Well done. So, all right. Well, that puts a wrap on 2022 and December.
It's
crazy. We're back to randomness. Back to randomness. Do you have a movie in mind?
I don't. No.
Okay.
No.
I do.
Okay.
I do if you don't.
Yep.
Okay. I had mentioned a few weeks ago, because my wife's asked about it several times.
Oh, yes.
The Strangers. 2008 home invasion movie. But no, she had asked, she goes, oh, have she watched it yet? I said, I don't think so.
Nope.
She goes, let me know when you guys watch it, because she wants to. So are you okay with that?
I'm 100% okay with that.
Okay. So that's one that you might, I won't say I think you might pick up some similarities between that one and the one we just watched.
Okay.
Not intentional choices made by the filmmakers, but just the same kind of home invasion, extended pause for tension kind of things. But much newer. So I don't think it'll get the downgrade that old movies are going to get. But no, this is a good one. A good one for sure. Yeah, this was one that when my wife and I saw it in the theater, I had a hard time. We both had a hard time watching the whole movie, focusing on the movie. Mm-hmm. We found ourselves in several scenes, looking off into the corners of the theater, and just trying to catch it in our peripherals because it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But no, it's a lot of suspense in this one, so good. I think we'll be good there.
That'll be nice.
Oh well, do you have any New Year's resolutions you'd like to share with our listeners?
Honestly, I tried to set one last year and it failed, and I hate failing at things. So no, I want to be more organized in my classroom.
Okay.
That is something that just because with third grade, it was okay to have, 5 minutes of unplanned time where the kids could just take a break. But with kindergarten, it's not okay.
Right, yeah.
So just being more meaningful in every minute of planning things out, that is something I want to work on this year.
Fair enough. Um, I need to get in better shape.
Oh, I do too. But see, I wasn't going to say that because
I know.
it's
That's the
hard.
one that I tell myself every year. It's obviously the go-to.
Yes.
And for me, I need an accountability partner. Like,
And
that's what I need.
Yes. And, like, I thought that doing that blood test would kick my butt in gear.
Me too. No.
My levels were perfect.
Mine weren't in bad shape either, but I was really looking forward to the lab testing, like you said, to give me some internal motivation to do something about it. But no, it hasn't. It's still at school. Like, I looked at it and I'm like, I guess if I don't understand too much of it, I don't have to worry about it.
And, like, I was like, okay, well, I'm chubby, but I'm healthy on the inside, and that's what matters. So,
yeah.
But
I know. That, I guess, and I'm glad we live in a world where all body types are becoming more and more accepted.
Yeah.
But I guess there's that little piece of my brain that it's like, but I wish people still thought you were fat so that you could be motivated to lose weight.
Yes.
But like I've said before, like, I'm married. I got 2 kids. My job doesn't require me to be physically fit.
No.
It's like, I don't enjoy working out.
No. No.
And I think if I saw results, then I probably would. If I saw results faster, that's my thing.
Yes.
But I'm also not a gimmick person. I know that diet and exercise are the way to do it. I'm not going to go on weight loss pills. I'm not going to go on some, like, we're going to change the way you think about food. I'm like, I don't think about food. I just keep shoveling it in my mouth until it's gone.
I love pasta. I love sweets. I love
I know.
everything.
That's the thing. It's like, just cut out bread and pasta bread and sugar. I'm like, I can't. Like, I enjoy that stuff too much.
Yep.
But I was telling myself yesterday, I'm like, I wonder, like, if I set a goal of, like, work out for 100 hours this next year. Just 100 hours. Like, it's less than a week total. But I still calculated that, and it's like 16 minutes a day every day for the whole year. And I'm like, I can't do that. I don't want to do that.
The people, I'm going to get off on a rant for a minute, but it's like the people
That's fine.
are like, if you really wanted to, you'd do it. It's like, okay, yeah, but I'm not waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. Like, I really want to sleep more than I really want to have a 6-pack again. And
I know. That's what people, and I've never had one, but yeah, when people are like, if you really wanted to, I'm like, that's exactly it. I don't really want to.
Yeah, and it's like, do I wish I were thinner? Yes. But also, my personality is going to get me further than a flat stomach, and that's what I live by.
Right, I know. That's just it. It's like, I'm tall and I hide it well. My metabolism is still way up there, so it's like I'm through the holidays, so it's like things will come back down to normal soon. But there's part of it that's like, but I've got no incentive.
Yeah, I'm
like,
short and I don't hide it well,
year,
so.
I mean, last year there was like the staff student basketball game, and they asked me to play, and so several weeks prior to that, I made sure that I got myself in good enough shape that I could. Like, I could participate and not get winded.
Not making a fool of yourself.
Which I did.
Yeah.
Right, which I did. But as soon as the game was over, I went right back to like, well, I'm done working out now. Like, I need that. I need something in front of me. And so, yeah, it's just not, it's hard to maintain.
Yeah.
When you don't want to.
Yeah.
So
like, I would just rather be fat and happy.
Yeah, it's not really a resolution because it seems like it's everybody's, but I'm like, I've got the equipment to do it. I just don't have to drive. So
yeah, and that's my thing too, is like, now that the school has a whole cardio weight room, it's like, there's really no reason not to do it after school. Like,
I know.
I have zero reason, but then it's like, I tutor, I have Casey's ball games to go to, I have a house to clean and laundry to do, like... I could come up with 100 excuses.
I've got my kids, and it's like, I don't want them to hang around for another half hour after school so I can work out. But really, ultimately for me, I need an accountability partner. I need somebody that is like I guess what I'm saying, I need lead.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of my time leading, and trying to be a leader, that I need somebody to say, all right, just sit back and go with me here. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to do this. And if I had that, I would do it.
That
But
is, yes.
I don't have that.
That's where
I don't have
struggle.
Yeah. I don't have somebody to hold me accountable, and I don't want to create fake narrative to find somebody. Because again, remember, we work in a majority female
Yes.
industry, and I'm a happily married man. I don't want to start this small town nonsense of, boy, they sure are spending a lot of time working out together.
Yes.
Because it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. So, like, there are certain people I know that not that there would be any issue, but I know my wife would be comfortable. Like, yeah, I don't care if you guys work out, but at the same time, there are some that wouldn't be, and I don't want to find out I don't want to find out the hard way which ones are not. So,
and then it'd be like, hey, sorry,
whatever.
we can't work out anymore. Wife doesn't want me to.
Yeah, and it's like it's just not worth it. Not worth it. So,
yep.
But yeah, that. So there we went. That was our segment on failed resolutions. But no, we will be back next week with The Strangers, a 2008. Is that what I said?
Yes.
Yeah, a 2008 movie. It's short too. It's not even an hour and a half, like 86 minutes. It's fun. It's effective. It's suspenseful. We will be back next week with that. Social media wise, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, where you can find us. You're watching this on YouTube. You can listen to us on your favorite podcast app. We're a little bit of everywhere. So, but to sign off, I hope all of you have a happy new year. This will drop before the new year. I know that's just, we're recording on the 30th, but I'll get it turned around before the new year. So I don't make a liar out of myself. But if you're listening to this after January 1st, I hope you had a good new year. And we'll see you next week for The Strangers. Oh, go ahead. What?
I was just going to say, and if we see you after the new year, it's okay if your resolutions fail.
Yep, it's totally fine. That's what they're for. So look at it anyway. They didn't fail. They just wrapped up early.
That's right.
So, yeah. All right. For Deducation, I'm Mike.
I'm Courtney.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.